Hello, and welcome to the second portion of the Game Theory podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jeremiah, and that other guy is David.
That's me.
I've got that song stuck in my head. Unbreakable, still loud, damn it.
Them females as strong as hail. I love that.
Are strong as hell.
I love that the very first episode where they're interviewing that guy, and it just immediately somebody auto-tunes it because that's how the internet would have done that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that slightly racist, a black eyewitness, let's auto-tune it and make it a viral thing.
Oh, there are some hilarious... Well, something I admire about African-American culture, we talked about this in multicultural, is that they're more kind of wear their emotions on your sleeve. That's kind of a bad way to put it, but more less emotionally repressed than us, right? Like we typically... how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. And we try to, everything's straight laced, and they can get more caught up in the moment of good and bad. That's kind of their culture, which I think is great. And it's hilarious whenever you see them doing that. Like whenever you see like we would play basketball and we would play like all black team or something, they would just lose their shit when they won. And when we won, we're expected to be like, oh, well done. Shake a hand.
Excellent upper lip, old chap. Yes.
Excellent passing. Well done. Like, yeah, that's our victories. They're just not as cool as their moments, but it's got its ups and downs, literally with emotion roller coasters. But I think it's great, hilarious. They're fun to watch. Eyewitness because they'll be like that motherfucker right there, and then speaking in generalities. But yeah, those are more fun to auto tune than someone being like, yes, I saw, like a British person or something.
Although those are rarely the white eyewitnesses they interview. Usually it's like, and then the aliens came down and straight up took Lester.
Yeah, why do they pick the worst people? Like, whether it's white or black, they always pick like someone like coming out of their house.
Least reliable, like sounding eyewitnesses they can find.
Yeah.
I was like, Dad, damn it, where's my shotgun?
Yeah, no, it's so crazy. Yeah, I saw a bunch of people running down. I took a couple pot shots at them because that's kind of like my land. It's just, why do they do that? Like, maybe they just want to be auto-tuned and go viral, but they've been doing that a long time before that happened, so I doubt it.
That's a great... It's just...
Anyway.
As soon as that happened, like, as soon as that became the title theme for that show, I was like, I'm on board. This is hilarious. Because you're not expecting it. They're just interviewing him, and all of a sudden, you're watching the YouTube auto-tune of it.
Yeah, with all the cats dancing and stuff. And everything that would have been on there. It's perfect.
So
anyway,
I thought I should explain my my Nietzsche. I was making fun of Nietzsche, but I realized if people haven't read Thus Spake Zoroaster or really understand Nietzsche, they might think I was just being randomly sexist for no reason, because you were giving me a horrified look when I said women are as smart as cattle.
Yeah, I was like, I don't understand the context of that. That just sounds
That
sexist.
was me humorously undermining Nietzsche as a wise philosopher by pointing out what a sexist asshole he also was.
Okay, yeah.
So he says... I've got the quote right here. I just read it a couple days ago. He's talking about friendship, and he says, "Are you a slave? Then you cannot be a friend. Are you a tyrant? Then you cannot have friends. All too long have a slave and a tyrant been concealed in woman. Therefore, woman is not yet capable of friendship. She knows only love. Woman's love involves injustice and blindness against everything that she does not love. And even in the knowing love of a woman, there are still assault and lightning and night alongside light. Woman is not yet capable of friendship. Women are still cats and birds, or at best, cows."
Wow, this guy. I can't believe there's a time where you could publish something like that and people didn't just lose their shit.
Yeah, so I was like humorously referencing that, and you just looked like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah, I was like, I don't understand the context of that joke. That's not really funny.
That's Nietzsche, but it's actually a really good chapter except for the random sexism, because he's talking about friendship. And like, if you compare him with Cicero, did you read Cicero's dialogue on friendship?
I don't remember. I read some of his stuff. Was it really famous? How does it go?
So basically he says that a friend should be somebody who you agree with in all things. You are united. You're basically two souls that are one. And so you share the same opinions, the same policies, the same values. And Nietzsche, on the other hand, has a more nuanced view. He says that in your friend, you should see a reflection of yourself, of your best self, but also your greatest enemy.
So we definitely have that.
The idea of frenemy
is my greatest enemy.
Yes, we did fight to the death on the day of your wedding. So
Yeah.
I feel like we have a more Nietzsche relationship than anything else. But it's this idea that like they're able to challenge you, but also to inspire you to better things. So it's like the idea of rivalry as friendship is more of a Nietzsche idea than a Cicero.
Huh. Yeah, I like that. That's set up a lot of really good stories, which has to do with our main topic here. Like I had mentioned it in the previous section. Devil May Cry. Like there's this like antagonism between Dante, the main character, who's in all the old ones, and also Virgil, his brother, who like they're both Nephilim or whatever. They're these chosen ones, but and they find themselves always on the same path, except there's always like a little point that they disagree on, and it often leads to fighting to the death. like
Just like us.
at my marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we're such good friends, but you think marriage is the way to go, and I cannot let you go down that path. Fight to the death.
It's like when people, I don't know if you've ever been this, but you're talking to someone and then you find out they're crazy at the last minute. Like, so they're like, hey, and you're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, did you see that fight this weekend? I'm like, oh, you watched the UFC? They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I did. Yeah, it was very rare to see people who like the UFC down here. And like, yeah, it's awesome. I really enjoy mixed martial arts. I'm like, me too. I also train. And just you start thinking, wow, we're friends.
Right.
And
it's
then
that C.S. Lewis moment where he says friendship is that moment when you say, you too? I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. And then at the last moment, though, like you're pulling up on your stop on the bus. Like I feel like this happened to me in Arkansas, but I'm pulling up and you're like, that's awesome. All right, well, I'll see you later. He's like, yeah, maybe you can come to the KKK rally. And I'm like, what? Like, it's that like last moment where you're like, oh, that ruined everything. Maybe not KKK. That would be an absolute deal breaker. I wouldn't be like, it's still good. But like if they say something like, I don't know. It's like finding the an onion on your burger. If you don't like onions, it just ruins the whole thing.
Yeah, or a pickle because it just seeped into the whole bun, and now your whole thing you're gonna taste.
Pickles are so good, David. You're wrong.
I love onions.
Fight to the death.
Fight to the death.
Yep, it's happening. But no, I love that. I love the fact that like you can work hand in hand with someone for a long time, and then at the last second you find out something awful about them, or not awful, just it's the slow divide, and that's how it happens. Like so there's a lot of marital research that suggests this, like on couples,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called polarization, right? Like, so they meet each other, and let's say one is kind of, this is kind of called the scientist versus artist one, but like, let's say I get married to a girl, and she is, she's very free and like, and like kind of laissez-faire,
Mm-hmm.
and I meet her, and I'm like, I love that about her. It helps me be more like that because maybe I'm too reserved.
Maybe this opposites attract kind of idea.
Yeah, although they don't. Like, we know that opposites don't attract. But yeah, like the idea that like everything's there except one tiny little difference. You don't want to, date yourself, obviously, but you want it to be.
If that were an option, yes, I would.
I know. That's what I was thinking. Whenever the Jessica Parker or whatever, isn't that Jessica? Isn't that Peter Parker's clone?
Oh, Jessica Drew.
Jessica Drew, that's it. Yeah, I was like, you need to date her, man. I think that's incest, but you need to date her.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Like, I wouldn't find myself interesting. I would be like, meh. But you want someone a little different. But over time, like, like that's great. And then over time, it's like, oh, hey, she left her, maybe she left her keys out or something like that. Something simple. And then like later, you start noticing a pattern. You're like, oh man, she really doesn't have her life together. She's not being reserved. Lets me be prepared for every situation, and she doesn't have that. And then over time it's like, dude, you never do this, and then the girl's like, well, you always do this, and over time, like, then you're fighting to the death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I love that slow disagreement that happens in Devil May Cry 5 as well, like all the other ones. So no spoiler, but there's this moment where it's like, whoa, I thought we were cool, and yeah, you find out something horrible.
Yeah. Like frenemies, rivals, people who you're on the same team. That's what made the Avengers 2 so interesting, right? It's like they're on the same team, but there's friction there too. And so wait, what are we talking about this week? Did we introduce the topic yet?
Oh yeah, just storytelling and stuff. I actually titled it "Story's So Good."
Story's so good, and what got me thinking about this was somebody in our Facebook group linked elders react to Mortal Kombat, and it went exactly as you would have predicted. They were pretty horrified at the fatalities, but one of the suggested, but somebody else in the comments put up the link to elders playing the opening of The Last of Us.
Wait, hang on. Before you say that, there was one lady who was like, "Yeah, what if she was killing people? Did you see that girl? Some old lady, she was loving it.
Oh yeah, like they liked the gameplay, but did you see the one that was just them watching the fatalities?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they were pretty horrified.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But the one where they were watching The Last of Us, like that's what really made me realize what a great medium video games are, because these people they have no idea how video games work. Like they're just not familiar with it. They didn't grow up with it. Like it was funny in the beginning. There's a lot of cutscenes, and then you take control of the character. Then there's a cutscene. You take control of the character. Whenever the cutscene would end, and it was just like the girl just standing in a room, like, man, what's she doing? This is really tense.
It was great. And then what about the part where, like in Last of Us in the very beginning, this isn't a spoiler, but Joel's holding a girl, right? He's holding a little girl in his arms so that he can run. And he's like, he picks her up and she's just standing, and there's zombies everywhere.
They're just watching, and they're like,
people.
Why is it going? You gotta go.
Yeah. And then they're like, man, he better start running soon. And they're holding the controller with their fingers on the bed. And did you hear the guy behind the camera actually goes, hey, you gotta run or whatever at one point, because she died and like repeatedly to these zombies.
So they're just not used to it. But at the end, when they're getting their feedback, like one of the things that, some of them were just like, I can't believe they would show something so violent. That should be illegal. There's always one of those. But some of them were like, that was interesting. Like they were kind of blown away by how much more invested they were. One of them even said something like, when you're watching a movie and you want to be like, hey, don't go in there. Don't go in that room. Like you can do that now. You can control where they go. And like they were really touching on something interesting about how video games make you feel, and we talked about this before, but make you feel like you're in the character's shoes. That makes you more invested in their story.
Yeah, there was that one lady who actually cried, and I totally get it. Like when I played
I kind of cried too playing The Last of Us.
The beginnings,
I was like, oh, my contact's acting up because hold on, Jeremiah, I'm just gonna adjust my eyes.
I know it's the worst. And then that's not fun. You're all by yourself playing. You're just crying in the dark.
Like, Troy Baker, you emotive son of a bitch, you made me cry.
Yeah, it is not great. But there's been many times like that where I felt like that, and it's the worst when you're like home alone playing, and like you're just in the dark, like maybe because it's late at night, and you're just like, I'm all alone. I'm so sad.
Oh, and that happened to me watching the end of Sword Art Online. I was just kind of like by myself. I was homesick that day, so I was already kind of fragile, like in an emotional state, like just feeling really bad, feverish, achy, and I'm just watching. I'm like, damn it, Sword Art Online, why am I crying?
Yeah, because then you get that there's this thing in psychology called transfer appropriate process, which just means all it means is that whenever you're thinking of something sad or you're in a sad state, then you recall sad things more often. And it's sort of like confirmation bias, where if you say something, hey, have you ever had when you're cooking and you just didn't have that thing right next to you, and you're like, all of a sudden you think about it, and as soon as you start thinking, you start confirming it rather than thinking about all the times that you had everything you needed. And then they're like, well, let me sell you a gadget. But it's the same thing here, except for emotions. Like you're like, my life sucks. Does it really suck? It does suck. And you think of all the sucky things.
Yeah. It's like, I can't get to sleep tonight. And come to think of it, I can't get to sleep a lot of nights. Yeah. So
life is bad.
And then you found actually a recent study about video games being more meaningful entertainment experiences for players.
Yeah. This was released actually last month. Technically last month, but it was just a couple weeks ago. I like to keep up on the literature. This guy named Greitmeyer, who's done some cool research before. He's actually looking at
Penn State, right?
I think the Greitmeyer. I think he's in Germany or Austria. So I'm maybe thinking about a different one.
Okay, I was looking at Penn State, but keep going.
Oh, you may be talking about the meaningful one. Yeah,
I'm talking about Mary Beth Oliver.
Okay, yeah. That one was out of Penn State. There's kind of two that were on the line. Another one was wait, did I send you these?
You sent me one. You sent me the one from Mary Beth Oliver. Okay.
I was like, what are you doing reading these? That's crazy. But
I just like to read. I got a JSTOR always up and just keeping track of the literature.
I thought you were like, I was sitting down in my house with the Journal of Psychological Science in front of me, and just strange.
As one does as a layperson.
No, sorry. So I'll talk quickly about this one because it's not the story's not amazing, but basically it was talking about like immersion in video games and then how people can so what they had them do was they had these two people they had people come in and play two different games. Did you ever play Gone Home?
No, I've seen it, but I haven't played it.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of like touted as one of these like, is it a game kind of things, right?
Yeah, one of those
Um,
very indie story focused games.
yeah, and that's the perfect way to put it. It's a first person indie, very story focused, quote unquote game. There's only like
It looks a
two
lot
more
like
players.
Life is Strange to me, like the way its aesthetics and the way it goes about doing its thing.
Yeah, but without the cool music, and Life is
Yeah,
Strange is like that, but like times three. So, but it's the similar thing, right? It's an
yeah.
indie version. So basically, you go through this house and you kind of discover what happened, right? You're this family member, and there's this person you find out pretty quickly that didn't come home or something like that, right? And then
Mhm.
you just go and you find all these clues and what's going on, and finally you kind of piece together what's going on yourself. But it's it's a meaningful experience because you're um, well, I won't spoil anything, but your role in that story is important, and or more importantly, what's going on in is important. So they had him play that, and then the other people played. Oh man, what was it? It was a Control, and it was a game I've never played. What was it called? It's like climbing. It's called Climb something. Oh, Against the Wall. Yeah, it's a climbing thing. You literally just climb a wall. I don't understand, but that seems like it would have been frustrating to me. But there's no narrative elements to it. You just
Climb the wall.
yeah, you're basically just clicking around. It's like a platformer, but full regal. And anyway, what they found was that people, after 20 minutes of gameplay, they were better at assessing people's facial expressions afterwards. The people that were in the gone home condition, and particularly the ones of the where they were told to, pretend you're the character, understand emotions, and that kind of thing, right? So that
Mm.
specific condition was the only one that got an increase in that, which is what you want in research. But it was a cool one because then it shows what he was saying was that video games can be meaningful, or they can be meaningful experiences. Um, yeah, but along the same lines, there's that other one that I sent. So why don't you talk about that one if you want?
So, and this is kind of the premise of our show, is that video games are more deep than culture really gives them credit for. And so Mary Beth Oliver, she's a professor in media studies and media effects research, which is something you're actually studying as well. And she says that video games do not seem to have the same critical acclaim as books and plays or even music, but in the study, participants in the study suggested that story details in the game were critical to feelings of appreciation. They also indicated that more meaningful games were associated with heightened feelings of insight or enrichment. That insight could be anything from an emotion or virtue like courage, or an insight on human spirituality. So the researchers, they reported this in Psychology of Pop Media Culture, said games may hold the promise of providing players with enriching or gratifying experiences. It's certainly true that there are some games that are silly or shallow, but that's the case for almost all forms of entertainment. Our research suggests that, contrary to stereotypes, games have the potential to be as meaningful to players as other more esteemed forms of entertainment, such as literature or cinema. Whereas viewers and readers typically watch characters make decisions in movies and books, many video games allow the player to actually make those choices, resulting
Yeah.
in feelings such as guilt or pride. So she's
Mm-hmm.
talking about how the interactivity of storylines actually makes the games more meaningful to them. And
Yeah.
she kind of talks about video game history. Like, early video games had little in common with other forms of narrative entertainment. Games have grown from simple point and click Twitch games to incredibly engrossing emotional experiences. And games now have the potential to give us the same sorts of feelings that great novels and music do. And that's something that I got really interested in, because you talk about movies like Schindler's List or books like Animal Farm, and how they changed or challenged the way we see the world for past audience. Video games are starting to be able to do that. And so in the study, they had 512 video game players assigned to one or two random groups and asked to recall games that were particularly fun or particularly meaningful. They then rated their perceptions about the game. And while participants reported that they found both types were fun to play, they said they had more appreciation for the meaningful games they played. So yeah, I'm in a book club. I know a lot of English majors, literature people, just for my profession, and they're always going on about Brothers Karamazov or James Joyce, and the kinds of emotional impacts these kind of great seminal classics have on when you read them. And I'm always like, yes, but we could also have a video game club like this and have similar discussions about The Last of Us or Life is Strange. Video games have matured to the point where they can give us these same experiences, and you could argue they give us these experiences in a more profound way because we're more invested in the decisions.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about it is there's rarely a time. Okay, you remember playing Telltale game, right? Like,
Mhm.
whenever you play the game, you get to make almost every meaningful dialogue choice. But occasionally he'll say something, and I'm like, that's not what I meant to say, or whatever, and you get, it pulls you out of the experience a little bit. Well, that happens all the time in books. The protagonist is gonna say something you disagree with if you
Yeah,
never get to choose one. So I agree. Yeah, that's gonna happen at a higher frequency because, like, you read these books like, yeah, like a lot of them. Like one of them is um, it's all about meaning actually. It's who's it? Come on, who's the guy who started the logotherapy? Man, that's wow. Sorry, recall problems right now. But it's there's this guy who's in a concentration camp. Frank, I was like, damn it, man, I can't remember. But anyway, he was in a concentration camp, and he did a few things in there that I didn't agree with, even though like it was a compelling narrative. But I think playing through it, where you get to do everything and you take responsibility for the actions, that's totally different than a character taking responsibility for their actions, and we're still
right.
able to be. I think books and movies, we're empathetic despite the medium,
Yeah.
versus video games where you kind of have to be empathetic.
Yeah, and I think there's always something that books are going to provide that video games won't. Like there's a sort of the letting go of agency, sort of. It's the author's able to take you to places very specifically, whereas he might not have that same level of control that a video game has. But I think the pros of that is the author might not take us where exactly he wants us to go in The Last of Us, but we're still like the fact that we got there ourselves is going to make us more invested in the result, I think.
Yeah.
So were you talking about Viktor Frankl, the guy who wrote like
Dang.
Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah, I said Frank, and then that threw me off. Viktor
Okay,
Frankl,
yeah.
yeah. He was a Jewish person in the concentration camps, and he was in the worst ones because he got
Yeah.
shuffled around a little bit, and he didn't know where his wife was, and it was just a horrible situation. But he ended up being able to smile and have a meaningful life anyway while he was there. And then when he got out, he wrote about that. He was like, "How was I able to be happy?"
Yeah.
In the
It's
concentration camp?
essentially it's existentialism, right? It's like when we were talking about Camus and the myth of Sisyphus. Like you have to find meaning in the absurd in order to make sense of life sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy is like about that. It's not all it is, but that's part of it. Is that, yeah, like I like how people are like, yeah, this sucks. Like there was a point in the Avengers, the new movie, where that happened. And I don't want to talk about it to spoil it, but this happens in a lot of movies where like you'll see something, shit's going crazy, and all of a sudden like the sergeant or something, like in a war movie will be like, yeah, people are getting blown the fuck up. This sucks. Now it's time to, so what? Like,
Mhm.
so you sit here and cry, or so you go and fight anyway? Which story do you want to live out? Who do you
Right.
want to be? A soldier or someone who's afraid right now?
Which meaning do you want to assign to this? Like it's your choice.
Exactly. And so that moment is always cool. I'm always like, yes, more of that, because people, it's easy to get caught up in the narrative because it sucks. Sometimes shit sucks, and it's easy to be like, man, my life sucks. And those are the thoughts you have, and you're like, man. And then you're like, yeah, do I want to be the kind of person, do I want to, how do I want to live this sucky life then? What do I want to
Right.
do?
Yeah, that's the premise of absurdism. That's what. Did you read Candide, Voltaire?
A little bit of it. I never finished it.
So the idea is he's making fun of Leibniz's philosophy of everything works out for the best. You hear that today, right? Like if there's a greater plan. Like it must have been for the best. If I hadn't gotten in that car accident, I wouldn't have met that nurse who ended up becoming a good friend of mine. Like we always try and find some reason why this was the best of all possible things that could have happened, because otherwise life is pretty depressing. It's just a bunch of random series of tragedies that have no meaning. And so Voltaire is kind of making fun of that because he's in the late 18th century where just everything shitty is happening, like slavery, genocide, religious wars, inquisitions, earthquakes, tsunamis. Everything bad that could happen is happening right now. And he's like, are you kidding me? This is the best of all possible worlds. And so he's lampooning that by every time something bad happens, and he has his little philosopher going, yes, well, if that earthquake hadn't happened here, it might have happened elsewhere under an orphanage. So really, it's really good that it happened here. And so, but he gets to the end of it, and the lesson, this is like highly debatable. So like if you got something else out of it, that's fine too. Like French literature is guys have been arguing about this for hundreds of years, but the last thing Candide says is like, all I know is that we should tend to our own gardens. which to me, I read that as saying like, okay, maybe this is the best possible worlds, maybe it's the worst. We don't really know. All we can do is find meaning where we can, and I'm finding meaning here in my garden, like tending to my own life and making this corner of it pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a good life lesson in general. I think that's awesome. But anyway, what does he know? What does he know?
Yeah.
But I think that's I think, and I don't know, this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, is to make a compelling story. I think a cool way, if I was going to make a video game, would be to get one of these philosophical questions and then play that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, isn't that the whole premise of BioShock? Like every time they take a philosophical question, they play it out to its absurd conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's to the point where, yeah, it's just confusing sometimes. But yeah, I like the idea that like philosophy or the big questions can be played out now, rather than like sitting and reading dry literature like in a philosophy class where you just go over the problems and different points and positions on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is like that, but it puts the rubber to the road. You know what I mean? Like it says, great, yeah, it's great to talk about it, but are you going to do it? And especially when it catches you in moments of either hypocrisy, like in like Telltale games, or in moments of where you have to make a big decision based on what you think is correct or right, you know, like some principle that you hold, and especially when it challenges it. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And I love it too when it comes unexpectedly. Like that's one of the things I loved about the Mark of the Ninja, was that I was going in expecting a platformy stealth game, and I got randomly interesting story philosophy questions, like the ending where I'm like, what is the moral choice here? What should I do? Which, boiling down, that's what philosophy is, right? Like, what should I do? What is the should? And so I don't know. I love it when it catches me by surprise. Like I expect that out of a game that's like a Telltale game, but when a game like the Mark of the Ninja makes me sit back and go, "Whoa, this is a big decision. I don't know what the right choice is." Like it's fun to have. I guess you could say that it ninja'd the philosophy into the game.
Oh, drop the mic. We're done.
It's
We're
a
done with the
stealth
podcast.
game with a stealth philosophy message at the end of it.
Killed it. Oh man. Can I top that? No. But here's what I would add is that yeah, a lot of times I love in games, and this literally just happened. This is why I suggested Burial at Sea, or the episode the expansion, the DLC, sorry, to BioShock Infinite so much, is because there's a moment at the end where I go, wait, what? I said that out loud, and then I was like, hold on. What? Like I love those moments where they catch you off by that so much. And I think they must go into the game. Do you think they go in like, is that like the first thing they have on the table, and then they design the whole story around that? Or
yeah, you almost have to, right? Like it's the same with that what's that Heart of Darkness, Spec Ops: The Line, right?
Oh,
it's the same
God.
thing. Like, they must have had that in mind from the beginning. No spoilers, but you know, like what it's building up to, they must have had that in mind from the beginning.
Yeah, it's called The Line.
Yeah,
the line that you cross. I mean, I think that game does not get enough. Like a lot of like small places. Well, I guess big ones too have really lauded it, but I just don't hear much about it. Like, who's that guy that talks really fast? Yahtzee or whatever? The guy.
Yeah, the British guy who does the funny criticisms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember, but basically he just does this really fast talking, like a little animated review of games, and that guy loved that game too. He's like, here's what makes this game one of the best games ever made. So if you guys haven't played that game, play it, especially because, like you said, you're going expecting a military shooter, and it's that and more. It's fun. It's zip lining across skyscrapers in Dubai while blazing guns. It's all that, like a little cheesy kind of military over the top fighting, but all of a sudden you're like wait, what's going on right now? And then everything starts.
And that's what's exciting about this industry right now, is we're getting to the point where we can give you entertaining experiences, but also tackle these big literature questions. Like, I don't know, it's very fun for me. Like my master's is in literature, French literature is what I studied, and to be able to see like these same questions and these same emotions coming out in video games, and then to have like that study out of Penn State where they're like, yeah, they were affected by these things, deeply affected by these things. Like having science confirm what I already suspected, and that video games can touch us in ways that previously only like classic movies and books could. That's really amazing.
Yeah. There's this have you ever heard of ASMR?
ASMR?
ASMR. No, yeah, ASMR. It's a auto sensory medial response or something like that.
I thought you were talking about the the sci-fi guy, the father of modern robotics.
Oh no, no, I don't know anything about that. No, this it's basically, if you guys should look this up if you don't, because some people get this and some people never report getting this, but it's kind of this like tingling in the back of your spine or whatever and at your head whenever something. It's in certain situations, like when people, a lot of it's self-care, like if someone's like cutting your hair or like if someone's talking to you quietly. You guys have to Google this, but there's a whole like subreddit based on this, and they put up videos where that will invoke these feelings. And anyway, I've had those happen. I get those sometimes, and I had those happen during video games, and it's usually a moment of like where you just feel kind of like, I don't know, vulnerable, or I don't know if it's vulnerable. That's a weird word for it, but you just kind of like, whoa. It's like it's a moment where you're just in the present moment, and you're just completely absorbed by it. And that's kind of what usually brings it about. But man, yeah, I've had those during video games. You've read a lot of literature and looked at a lot of stuff, and obviously you're in a book club, which is, you know, super nerdy.
Yeah.
I play video games. I'm super awesome.
You podcast about video games.
Yeah. And read
you don't just play them, you research and podcast them. But yes, tell me how I'm a nerd.
Yeah. But your casual reading is super nerdy. But yeah, what is your take on like which one's better in your experience, like at invoking emotion? Are they similar or different? Better?
I think they have different strengths. Like because it's not a visual medium, the book forces your brain to get more engaged in the narrative. So like if you were watching a movie, you might just glance over and be like, okay, but if you're reading about someone describing like the snow falling outside, like of necessity, your brain is like creating that image in your head. And so things that happen there because your brain is creating the scene for you, I feel like that gives it a way to touch you like in a more vulnerable place than a movie could. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So and again, like I said before, the author has more control of like, he can't control like what kind of room you're building in your head, but he has more control of where you're going because he doesn't have to give you any freedom of choice. So you're along for the ride, and if you get invested in it, then like he can really like show you things that you might not have seen otherwise. So I don't know. It's hard to say which one is better at actually giving you that emotional investment. I think that I think they can both coexist and both be good at different things.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of like in D&D whenever, like if I'm trying to invoke some kind of emotion out of you guys, if I'm DMing, it's hard sometimes because you can't stop the scene and emphasize something the way you can, and like when just creative writing, where you're like, whoa, let's slow down the pace right now and do this. You know, I can suggest that the pace can slow down, but you guys can be like, no, fuck it. We sleep 12 hours when we get up and whatever, and do whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, what? Hang on, it's, you know, dark stormy night. You know, you just came back, and what's going through your head? You know, because I'm trying to get something. I'm trying to set the scene.
Yeah, giving the reader or the audience agency necessitates that you lose full control of the pacing and the narrative and the message. And
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Hey.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So
it necessitates you lose some of the.
You lose some of the control of the narrative, right? Like giving them agency makes you lose some of that agency for yourself. So you can't take them exactly where you're going to go. That's the con. The pro is if they get somewhere amazing anyway, then they're more invested in what they found because they kind of led themselves there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like that suspension of disbelief, or, you know, we find that people become immersed when they want to become immersed. It sucks, but a lot of literature actually shows that scientific literature, not like reading literature, but a lot of studies are like, well, shit, we were hoping to do this, but if they don't want to get immersed, they just won't. You know, it's kind of like if you go in and you're like, oh, this is gonna be this. Oh, it's a Western in space, lame, you know, and then you just don't get into Firefly because you just don't buy into it. You have to willingly. I mean, there are things that can increase the chances that you're going to willingly do it, but yeah, with that you're buying people in automatically because they want to experience the story in a video game. You want to do that, but man, I think even some game design elements really screw with this, though. Like, it's hard to do this. Like, pacing, it really fucks up your pacing and the feels whenever there's like explorable things in the environment. You know?
Yeah. That was my one complaint with The Last of Us, right? Like, the tension disappears when I know that not only do I have time to stop and look in every single drawer and every cabinet for tape and scissors and whatever else I need, not only do I know that I have time because no matter what happens, like the game won't progress until I leave that building,
Hmm.
but I also
Yeah.
feel punished if I don't. Like I like to play immersively. Like I like to be like, oh no, that girl has been kidnapped. I need to go rescue her. I'm not gonna stop and look in every drawer.
Oh
But
yeah.
if I don't, I get fucked because I don't have all the supplies I need when I get there. So like the gameplay elements can still sometimes, even in a nearly perfect game like The Last of Us, the gameplay elements can get in the way of narrative in the way that in a book is just not even an issue. Like
Yeah.
I've put down James Joyce, right? Like the Dubliners, the one of his short stories is called The Dead. I've read that and I put that down and had this kind of like, whoa, holy shit. And I just watched the snow for a while coming downstairs and just thought, come outside, and I just thought about it. And I felt like this connection to a dead Irishman that I'll never meet. But just for a moment, I was like, wow, like his brilliance, I connected to that for a minute and I was in his mind. And that's something that I sometimes get at the end of video games too, like the end of Bioshock Infinite. I had that same kind of moment of like, whoa, that was incredible. But sometimes with games, the downside is like what you're talking about. These gameplay elements can kind of get in the way of that connection.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a part in Devil May Cry. God, that game is so fun. Okay, anyway, there's a point where everybody wants to be Spider-Man, right? But anyway, there's this the point where you're kind of being that. Let's say this is cool. There's a getaway vehicle that you're trying to help leave, but there's a huge demon chasing these people, and they don't have the powers you do. So what you do is you're fighting it off as you're going. You're chasing this car and staying up with it while you're kind of fighting the elements against it. So like like the demon will like bust the ground up, and the ground comes up, and he's like, oh crap, and so they swerve and they're tearing towards it, and then you whip over there and then like kick the car out of the way so they can traverse it perfectly, and then they fly towards an intersection, and oh no, there's a train coming, and then you derail the train. Like you're doing all this in real time because you can kind of slow down time for a second. It's so fun. But one part that really screws that is that there's this like no, it's a ship. A ship just got wrecked out of the harbor, and it flies up and it beaches itself, and it's got a spinning rotor, and the car's going straight for it, and so it slows down in time. You see it kind of slowly skidding, and the rotor's going all slow, and it gives you and I land on this platform, and I was like, oh look, there's skulls, and skulls are like currency. So like I went and I killed those and got a couple other, and I went and looked around for secret keys, and then and what's cool is the game actually was like, oh yeah, and then they died, and I was like, oh. It doesn't say explicitly it's on a timer, but it looks like it's frozen in time. From where I was standing, I was like, I think I'm good. But it kind of screwed me because then I was like, well, I want those things, but I don't want my friends to die. I guess I'm gonna go get those things and I'll let my friends die. But no, I definitely had to.
When the game elements interfere with the plot elements, like that's where it can kind of pull you back out of it again.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that was such a fun point because you're saving your friends as they're trying to get away from this demon that is your fault, So you're just like, no, it'd be like if Spider-Man was trying to get Doc Ock off of Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben's driving away, and you're just like, you're trying to keep it away. You're trying to save your friends. It's this really cool scene. It's really fun, and just there's a moment where you're like, Skull. And you just leave your friends to die. So I'm glad it punished me and killed me. But on the other hand, man, I missed out on some skulls. And I'm sure if I played it perfectly, if I restarted the checkpoint, there's a way to do them both. But yeah, it's kind of screwed with that a little bit.
Yeah, but I think we're getting better at it. We're getting the place where the gameplay and the story is meshing more seamlessly every time. I think The Last of Us got close. If they just had tone down the salvaging, scavenging, exploration bits a bit, they could have, because that was a really emotionally invested game. Like even those old people in the movie were just like, wow, I really was concerned about what was going on. I really felt like I was there, and I really cared about the decisions I made. So I see a lot of potential in video games as far as storytelling medium. I think that in 200 years, you're going to have literature courses that include video games, and just like we have film courses now, right, in college where we study filmmaking and film storytelling. I think video games will be a medium that is as respected as film and novels.
Yeah, you definitely see the first steps. I mean, we got the Museum of Modern Art, bringing in video games now.
Right, yeah.
And not just as I think a lot of them are using it as art, aesthetic art, but like you said, literature art is the art
storytelling.
Yeah, it's they're getting really good at it, and I like the fact that over time it's gotten better and better, and serious writers are coming over and writing this stuff.
I mean, there's a reason this podcast has gone as long as it does, right? Like we have psychology all over in video games, and we have literature being told. Like video games are our society's literature. It's our modern day way of telling stories. Comics, movies, video games. Like that's the art we're producing now. We're still writing books, but we're able to talk for how many hours have we spoken? It's like hundreds of episodes, 2 hours each. We've been able to talk that much because there's literary value to video games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think people are going to take it seriously in the future, but I think that's a good point about meshing the story together with the gameplay mechanics, and that's a challenge you don't get in movies or literature. Probably is you're trying to progress this story, this arc, this how you experience things, and you're really got to mesh in the gameplay. Someone who did it really well, I think, was maybe this Devil May Cry, for example. I hate to lament on too much, but I just played it, so or not lament, but praise it too much. But I just played it, so it's fresh in my mind. So I'll use that as an example. As you're doing these things that you need to do, like to progress the story, you're actually playing the game. Like you'll have little hooks that you're doing, and like you'll fight a couple guys in the street, and then you'll jump on top of a building. You're running along the building. There's a little mini game of like these fires coming down. You got to dodge them, and you got to use your moves. Between them. It's cool. So like you're swinging from like maybe a lamppost, and you shoot forward to like a demon that's flying, and you catch on him, and you leap off his head, and as you're flying away, you're shooting him and killing him. And it's moving you through, and you're doing things, but it's part of the mechanics. One person that did it horribly was Binary Domain. Think about how much of that story was told through cutscenes, and how none of it was told through game.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I can't think of one point where that was made, or one plot that was made at all while there's shooting involved.
There were so many great things like that skyline thing where you're going down the skyline and people are shooting at you. That would have been a great gameplay experience instead of just a stupid cutscene.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's like those two departments never talk to each other.
But contrast that to Mega Man X, right, for the Super Nintendo, where you start off and you're just this weak robot getting your shit like wrecked by that bounty hunter, that Boba Fett looking guy.
Yeah.
And then Zero comes in and just destroys that guy. And then you're like, holy shit, Zero, you're awesome. He's got like a laser sword and sweet hair and like, or a cape or whatever it is. And then he says, yeah, and you're going to become awesome too. You may become more powerful than me. And you're like, what? No way, I'm going to become more powerful than Zero. And then through the gameplay elements, you beat bosses, you take their weapons, you find upgrades, and the upgrades aesthetically make you look more like Zero looks, and at the very end you fight that same bounty hunter again, and Zero's captured, and you kick that bounty hunter's ass and you rescue Zero. And so like the story elements of unlock your full potential and become like me come out in gameplay. Like they come out in the power-ups, they come out in the boss fights, they come out in the capsules that make you look and act more like Zero does. And then that game that Anita Sarkeesian was talking about in that video where you're the Scythian and every boss battle makes you lose a maximum heart, makes you weaker. Yeah. And the whole theme of that, like that's another example of story and gameplay coming together, because the whole theme of that is like, this is a sacrifice. It's a terrible journey and it's going to end up destroying you in the end. And then each boss battle, you're getting weaker and more vulnerable and more, you're sacrificing some of yourself represented by that heart piece.
Yeah. I think it takes a certain, you have to abandon any idea of game design, I think, or old school game design. Going in, and you have to just kind of think, all right,
does this serve my narrative?
Yeah, I'm gonna put game design in there. Obviously, it's a worthy topic to study, but and you want to use that in a way that's most meaningful for the story. So, like, I think, like in D&D, I did this. I tried to make every battle, every fight mean something. I didn't want to just be like, like, oh, you come over the corner and there's gnolls, fight. Right. Which happens sometimes, but I tried to make everything
to have stakes.
Yeah, like oh, you've got to fight, instead of like just have a gnoll battle. I would have a gnoll battle where I would try to do something like oh, the gnolls are actually threatening the town and they can't move supplies through there, and once the supplies are freed up, well, that's going to open up Blue Rock, and once you get to Blue Rock, then you're going to learn something else about the story, and you're going to have a confrontation with one of the bad guys. Like, I try to make every fight mean something. It's more taxing on the game designer, but man, I think in my experience it leads to a better. Yeah. It doesn't feel disjointed. It doesn't feel like, oh, here's my story, now I'm shooting scrap heads. Oh, here's my story, now I'm shooting more scrap heads in a different cool and fun environment. The game was fun. The gaming elements were awesome, and the story was pretty cool. I mean, like, it had a cool plot, but it was just two different things. You'd fight and then
they weren't integrated. I think we see video games transitioning that way. Like if you look at old games in the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo, it was gameplay was 100%, and then the story was tacked on. Like the story served the gameplay, right? It's like
Mm.
Mario needs to rescue the princess because we want to make a side scroller, and then like the instruction manual would make up some kind of wacky story about how about Koopa turned everyone into bricks, and you have to save them and the Mushroom Kingdom, whatever. But it was clearly all like retrofitted into a platformer. They were just trying to give some kind of justification for it. But now I think game developers have to ask themselves, does the gameplay serve the story, or is it the other way around? BioShock Infinite, the gameplay serves the story. The story was you have to protect this girl and she can open up rifts in the world that makes her a useful ally. The gameplay was she opens up rifts and like helps you protect her by being a useful ally. It's not like an escort quest. And so in BioShock Infinite, the gameplay served the story. This idea of like high flying, swashbuckling, grappling adventure served the narrative. It wasn't the other way around.
Yeah, and I think you're right that that's a trend, because even in I mean, like, I shit on Call of Duty or those kind of people a lot, but they're well designed games, and every fight means something, and they do, like for example, they're like, oh, we have to progress this, we have to get through this sub so that we can get to the nukes or whatever, right? And the nukes are actually part of this larger plan or whatever, but the point is that fights mean something, so you're invested in the mechanic, and it's fun while it happens, like you're zip lining down a skyscraper, and oh crap, we're in a fight, but the point of us getting in this fight is so that we can survive to get to the ground or whatever.
And that might be why it's hard to go back to JRPGs now, from the 90s, because like Final Fantasy VI has an amazing story, but also a lot of random encounters that don't serve the story at all. They're just there to make you level up so you can get to the next boss.
Oh, that's a good point.
Dragon Age or Dragon Quest, same problem. Chrono Trigger started to get away from that by letting you see the monsters, so you could avoid them if you wanted to. And I always like invent stories like, I gotta clear out this forest of goblins so it'll be safer. Like I'd make up little subquests for myself. But maybe that's part of like, because you didn't grow up playing Final Fantasy VI, so going back to it now with this modern sensibility of plot being the most important element, like it's hard to go back and justify. It's more like Binary Domain, where you have the random encounters and you have a great story, but they don't feel very integrated all the time.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like back then I was much more, even Final Fantasy Tactics, I mean, I liked that game, but I don't know what the story was. I challenge anyone to be able to eloquently tell me what the story was. Like it's infamously cryptic, or like nobody knows. Like even on the internet, people have their theories and they're interesting, but nobody knows. It's kind of like Final Fantasy VIII. Whenever you play the game, you're like, did I die? Like, nobody knows. Nobody knows if that happened.
After the first CD, no one really knows. Like they can't even like tell you what happened really very well. Or Final Fantasy VII, right? You're like, I'm a clone angsty soldier fighting a different clone. There's an alien, and there's a race of ancient people, and there's holy. Holy is a thing. It's called holy. Like it's just like, yeah.
If you think that you know the plot of either of those, I challenge you, because maybe you do, but I challenge you to go find someone else who also thinks they know, and just put those two people in a room together and watch what happens. It's crazy, because they're like, no, because this shows this, and they're like, no, that actually shows this. So. Those stories were weird, but the gameplay was so fun that we just did it anyway. And we expect the gameplay to be fun, but not stories to be good. So I think you're right. Now, like when I play a game, the gameplay's fun, but the story's weird, like Binary Domain. I'm like,
yeah.
Meh. Like you make a better point of like, humans versus robots and blurring the line in between in Deus Ex: Human Revolution, which also was pretty disjointed with gameplay and story, but it was much more meshed than otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think overall stories have gotten a lot better, and I'm glad that we're attracting more people to come and write on them. Because I mean, we've been doing this as amateur storytellers for a while in D&D, trying to make an interesting story. In fact, didn't we explicitly say that when we were talking about the Castlevania episode, or the Monster Hunter Castlevania-esque D&D like roundtable thing we did? Wasn't it, didn't we explicitly say like, okay, so we're doing this and that's moving this theme forward?
Right. Yeah, we were very conscious of themes and overarching storylines. And yeah, it's a maturing field, especially video games. Like tabletop games have figured this out earlier because they had to. Like when you don't have any bells and whistles and lights and sounds and music, you have to put more focus on story. That's all you're doing is basically telling a story. There's some min-maxing and some numbers involved, but I think D&D and Vampire the Masquerade and other games, they figured this out earlier than video games have because we just had to. But video games are in that place right now where they're maturing as a medium where story is becoming so important, and it's making it, I think, more respectable as a result. It's making it a better, more quality, or at least worthy of study, worthy of analysis.
I wonder if one of the reasons why that's happening is because indie games are huge right now. Indie everything. Indie beer making, indie films, indie games, indie music. People like independent because people are kind of anti-corporations a lot right now because, there's a lot of corruption that we're finding out in the government and stuff coming from corporations. So I think there's kind of a zeitgeist of that in general. But I wonder if, you get these indie games that come up with huge, crazy good stories, and they're competing with, these AAA titles. I'm sure that makes them go, wait a minute. Because I know, in beer, for example, Budweiser, whenever they see an independent company do well, they go try to buy it. And Coors does the same thing. Blue Moon was distributed by Coors Light, who bought out the idea from these wheat beers that were catching on. But same thing in video games, I think, is probably, you see these amazing stories and they're like, man, if we added that to our AAA title, our already good development team, then we're going to kill this.
Sure.
Which I think is part of the problem with military shooters. It's hard to make it meaningful. You're stopping a nuke, saving the world every time. I'm pretty sure. And I like military shooters. I play almost all of them. But I just can't think of it. Besides Spec Ops, I can't think of a single one that really moved me. But Spec Ops was one of those that, I finished and I was like, the fuck? It took a minute.
And not every game needs to be this emotionally significant or literary masterpiece, right? Just not every I'm going to read Harry Potter this summer. I've never read it before. I'm not expecting it to be a literary masterpiece. I'm just going to expect it to be fun. Some games can just be fun. Gears of War, right? There's no moment where I'm like, whoa, what a great insight into humanity. It's just a fun, it's like your AAA blockbusters, right? You can go see your summer blockbuster movie and not expect it to change your life like a Schindler's List would.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because I watched Cloverfield. I enjoyed that. That was really big when we were younger. Or a Godzilla movie. Pacific Rim. Did you see that?
Right, exactly.
I watched that
about
shit.
Robots fighting Godzillas, and it's so much fun. It can be valuable without being insightful, is what I'm saying.
Oh shit, son! There it is. There's the tagline. That's the tagline for the episode. I think that's what we've been beating around the bush for a while for. So, yeah, that's a good point. But to make an insightful one, I think, I don't know. I like those experiences. I'm finding.
And that's what's exciting is that this is something that we can do now. That study kind of proves that we can have insightful, meaningful connections to stories that are not on print or on the film.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, good to see science on something that we've been speculating about for a while. So, well, good. I hope if you guys have any thoughts about this, or I know we have some game developers who listen, who have been in our cadre before, but tell us a little more about this, storytelling in general, that kind of thing. Then yeah, weigh in. And speaking of weighing in, I guess we can move to the feedback section.
Yes.
All right, this is the feedback section where we talk about our interactions with the community. Yes, we got oops, I shut that tab down, which I'm dumb. But we got some feedback on one of our videos.
Okay. What did we get?
It is, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Well, actually, can you cover something else and I'll find this?
Yeah, we did get an email from Manuel. He says, "Hello, fellow game theorists. I just bought a 3DS in anticipation for the Attack on Titan game, and I want to know if you guys have any good suggestions for games for the 3DS."
Oh, yes. All of the Fire Emblem games. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good 3DS library. Let me tell you my favorites that I own. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Yeah, that's the Zelda game. if you like Zelda at all, especially if you like the Super Nintendo Link to the Past, this is the spiritual successor of that one. It's a great game. Fire Emblem Awakening, like Jeremiah said, Fire Emblem Awakening is one of my favorite games of all time. Bravely Default, if you like old school Japanese RPGs. Bravely
How about that
Default.
ending though?
I never got to it. I loaned it to a friend who turned out to be an enemy, and he, I don't know, like fed it to one of his kids or something, and it's gone. Maybe between a couch cushion. Someday, if he can be bothered to look, I might have it again.
I'm the worst.
Let's see what else for the 3DS. If you like platformers, the Super Mario 3D Land is really fun. It's like a kind of like Mario 64 on the N64, but on your 3DS. Trying to think of other games that I've recently enjoyed. Oh, Monster Hunter Ultimate 4. It's a lot of fun if you like. It's kind of a kill monsters, skin them into gear, put the gear on. Now you can kill bigger monsters, skin those, repeat forever. So if you just enjoy like getting stronger without actually leveling up, but because you're actually getting better at the game and making better equipment, that's a fun one. Smash Brothers, obviously for the 3DS or for the Wii U, is a ton of fun. So yeah, those should get you started or at least keep you busy until Monster Hunter, until Titan Hunter, Attack on Titan comes out.
Titan Hunter, yeah.
Any I missed, Jeremiah, that you can think of?
No, I mean, I the reason why I wanted to get the system was for those new games you already mentioned. So, nope, not at all. Yeah, Attack on Titan's gonna be the big one coming up, man. That game or that movie. Oh my gosh.
By the way, you have been asking me a lot of Wii U questions lately. Are you thinking about getting one of those?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I'll talk to you offline because there's a lot of dry questions I want to ask. But yeah, we're talking about getting one for upgrading our console. My PS3 is like dead. It's like 8 years old. We got it like right when it came out because my dad thought he wanted to be a gamer and because he didn't know what gaming was. Because he buys this console and he's like, he had just recently been divorced, right? And so he's like 50 and he was like just hanging out at his house and he's like, well, and this guy is a guy who goes all out. Like his home theater system, he's like, I guess I like movies. So he built a home theater system, like a room, like chair, like he just built one and then bought the biggest screen TV. And like this is after like two movies that he watched that he's like, I really enjoy this home watching movies at home thing. So he did the same thing whenever he got recently divorced. He was like, I've got a home theater system now. What about a game? So like he had never played a game his whole life. I never played a game with my dad ever. And he was always like, go outside, But all of a sudden he buys a PS3, 2 controllers, like 5 games, like and the full setup and 2 controllers. What are you doing, Dad? You don't have friends that game. But anyway, so then like literally 1 week he runs into a wall for a long time and can't turn his upper torso and he's like, this thing's stupid, and he just sent it to me. So we've had it for like 8 years now. It's dead. Like so we're looking to upgrade and we're looking at what consoles to get. So kind of juggling between PS4 and Wii U. So
Fantasy Life, another 3DS game I just remembered. That was that one that surprised me at the very end of last year. It's like a RPG meets Harvest Moon kind of game where you just run around crafting and fishing and chopping lumber. It sounds stupid, but it's fun.
I kind of want to play that game.
Yeah.
But
I'll loan it to you, said me never again in the future.
You should not. Hey, where's my pillow, Dick? It's my pillow.
You left it here. That's different from me borrowing it.
No, it's not. It's the same. Anyway, yeah. So
are you comparing a pillow to the greatest RPG that came out in the 3DS?
Yes, that pillow will change your life. It's amazing.
I'm gonna start using it if it's that great.
You dick. I'll go ahead. I'll buy it. I don't care. $75.
Yeah,
but
like the price of a new video game.
Yeah, about the price of a game. So other feedback. We got one from YouTube comments. We've been getting ones on, like Stitcher and YouTube, and I guess we're getting a different market. But from John Carroll 216 says it was about our Star Fox episode.
Yeah.
That one was hilarious. I was listening to it and I was walking around in the store and I started laughing out loud like an idiot. Like as I'm like picking out tomato sauce, all of a sudden I'm like, ha ha. But he said, man, I haven't even watched the video yet, but I just wanted to say that I love this podcast. Keep at it. Yeah. are great at what you do. Oh, ye are great at what you do. And I just said, thanks, man. I appreciate you lending your ear, and especially for giving us feedback. And he said, you're welcome. This episode brought tears to my eyes, just like your poor dad before I got him killed. Pepe really was an asshole, wasn't he? Ha ha ha.
I think a lot of people were surprised that Pepe was the biggest asshole on the team. I think most people just assumed it was Falco.
Yep. Newsflash, people. Pepe's a dick, or has Alzheimer's. We didn't deduce those.
Yeah, it might not be his fault.
True.
All right, so we got a comment on the Facebook group from Paul, and he's talking about Starship Troopers. He says, Jeremiah, have you read Starship Troopers? Movie doesn't count, as that has about as much in common with the book as G.I. Joe has to real-life military. If you have, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how they present morals as an absolute science and how you have to go through military service to become a citizen, especially the latter since you served yourself. I don't agree with the book's whole philosophy, but it got me thinking more about what it means to be a citizen and how, since we are just given citizenship, we have no real stake in participating in government to make everyone's lives better instead of just worrying about our own little tribes. If you haven't read it, I'll buy you and David copies as a thank you for your hard work on the podcast, and would then like to read or hear your thoughts on it if you choose to talk about it. There's way more than I touched on here, and I don't want to give anything away. The book was a million times better and different than I expected.
Huh. Yeah, I have never read it, but it is on my list of cool things to do, so I'll have to do that. I was just talking about sci-fi books.
Yeah, I've also not read it, but his comment and our episode today got me thinking, and I had an idea.
What?
So I'm thinking Game Theory Podcast Summer Book Club / when I say book club, I mean things that are awesome club. So
okay.
So summer is a time when we tend to have more free time. I don't know if you do, but most people tend to have more free time in the summer than the rest of the year. And so I thought it might be fun, like as a once a week, either like a bonus episode or something that could like tag in for one of our segments. If we could have like a book club where we all pick like either a classic game that everyone get their hands on, like a Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger, or, you know, the Last of Us, you know, something that, I don't know, The Last of Us because it's an exclusive, something that everybody can kind of get their hands on. And we all like, I make a reading list and we all meet once a week, and like you, me, JT, Tim, we just discuss it as we would like any other work of literature, what insights we had, our impressions and things, where we think it's going. And just have these kind of high-level discussions. We could even do Starship Troopers, you know, just something, a book, a movie, an anime, a TV show, a video game, some kind of thing that has enough depth that we can really chew on it and discuss.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, let's start that thread. That's a great idea.
And I thought we could even get the audience involved, right? So like the listeners can also like download it too. They could play the same game we're playing or watch the same anime or whatever we decide to do. And then they could write in their comments. We could even have like a guest host on the show who jumps in, like kind of gives us their feedback too. So I don't know, some way to kind of interact with the audience, with the listeners, and really just kind of put our money where our mouth is. Let's treat these things like literature.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm down for that. Where I should have some gaming time this summer. This would be perfect. It's perfect timing for that. Awesome.
Great. I also waited until now to bring it up because I wanted you to have the additional pressure of an audience listening to your reaction. So I'm glad that worked.
Awesome. Yes.
Let's think about that. We'll start brainstorming ideas. Listeners, if you have any kind of classic video games or movies or animes or books like Starship Troopers, for example, that you think would make an interesting summer reading, and by reading I mean experiencing, obviously, bring them up in the Facebook group. We'll have a discussion.
Definitely, yeah. And let's try to keep it things that are attainable. Although, you know, there's going to be some things that just won't be.
Yeah,
won't be able to do.
I think anything on the Super Nintendo or Sega, you know, it's pretty easy to emulate, if nothing else.
Oh, so old school.
Yeah, old school would be easiest because those are easier for everyone to get their hands on. Like The Last of Us is worth it, but I don't think, because it's a PlayStation exclusive, it's going to be hard to get everyone on board. So try to avoid things that aren't easy to get their hands on, whether it be like something that's on Netflix, something that's on Hulu, something that can easily be emulated or found on virtual consoles. Those things would be ideal.
Yeah, Telltale might be a good one for that. You can get those on your phone.
Yeah, Telltale games, exactly. Ideally, it'd be something that maybe one of us has read, but not everyone else, so we can kind of like be exposed to it for the first time. But even if it's like, I know that Tim and JT haven't played a lot of Telltale games, so I'd be willing to replay, you know, Wolf Among Us or something. So yeah, things like that.
That's a great idea, man. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, but I think that wraps up the feedback. We didn't get any new reviews, did we? Pretty sure.
I don't think so.
But if we did, we'll save those for next time because you guys have been listening long enough. And thanks for all the feedback, everyone. Keep it up and let us know what you think about the book club idea. Till then, we'll see you guys next week with another episode. So we're gonna sign off, I guess. Bye. Have a good sign off. Bye.